No way they do this. Reports have linked the Islanders to an insane trade, and we're going to discuss it on this episode of Islanders Digest as the St. Louis Blues are really struggling this season, and as a result, Jordan Kyrou is back in trade rumors. And this is very notable for us Islander fans because this is a player that has been linked to the Islanders for a long time. The last time there was a link, it was a rumor that the Islanders would consider shopping Noah Dobson in exchange for Jordan Kyrou. As we know, that did not happen. The Islanders ended up going for a future package with Noah Dobson, but now with things going south in St. Louis, it seems like there is a chance this player might be shopped again, even though his no trade clause has clicked in. And we're going to really dive into how likely this is, if it makes sense for the Islanders, and what a trade between these teams would look like. So first, let's talk about what Elliot Friedman had to say on his podcast about this situation. He says, Doug Armstrong is out there. I think he's trying to find out what the value of his guys and what he can do. A guy like Kyrou, he has trade protection, $8.125 million, isn't as big, but as it was even 4 months ago. And basically, yeah, with the cap going up, this situation has definitely changed. I really don't understand the conversation about that $8.125 million. For the record, with what Kyrou does, I think that is a steal regardless of what the cap was. This is a player who consistently puts up around 70 points, off to a very slow start this season. But this is a player who is also locked up for the next 5 years at that cap, and he is only 27 at this point in time. So I've really never seen the issue with that contract, although it was something the Blues were previously concerned about allowing to go to his no movement. Sorry, it's not a no trade clause, it's a no movement clause. The Blues were concerned about that because I guess they had some second thoughts about this player. I really don't know what it is about the Blues and Kyrou, and it doesn't seem to be really the fans either who are on his case. It really seems to be management. Whatever it is he's doing on the ice, there's something they don't like about him. And typically with players like this, he is the type of player that, he's great when he's scoring. You're not going to love him as much when he is cold, but that's with every scorer. Every scorer goes through that. With the Islanders, he would be one of the better scorers, and for that reason, a lot of Islander fans want to acquire this player. My whole question is what is St. Louis looking for? And really looking at St. Louis, let me know if you're a St. Louis fan in the comment below what you think this situation, this team is in, what type of assets are they looking for, because this is a team that's really confusing. I think a big part of that confusion is last year they looked like they were on the rise, really making the playoffs in a dominant fashion to end the year, and then looking good in the playoffs, almost winning a round. They already have so many young prospects coming up into the NHL. I assume they want players right now, which definitely complicates things. It does help the Islanders that I assume the Blues are looking for players that can play right now, just because the Islanders are not in a position to trade future assets. And I've seen a lot of Islander fans out there, I'm sure there'll be some in the comments talking about how, you can trade a prospect for a player like Kyrou. And yes, Kyrou is a great player. He's not too old where I think there's an issue trading a prospect based on where your team is. But even though the Islanders' start to this season has been a little more exciting than I think some of us were expected, they're definitely not in a position to be buying with their assets. Maybe if you want to add the Colorado first round pick in any trade to get something like that done for Kyrou, I don't hate that idea. The odds of that pick being a player better than Kyrou is not high, and it's going to take a while for that player to develop. But the idea of the Islanders either trading their first this year or any of their top prospects, does not make any sense. Still, this is a player that has been linked to the Islanders for a long time. So we're going to really talk about what the Islanders could likely give in return for the player and whether or not it makes sense for the long term. Now, I do have a feeling the Blues are just testing this out. I really don't see a Kyrou trade happening anytime soon in terms of like the next 20 games or so. But if things keep on going south in St. Louis, again, this is a team that made the playoffs next year, so maybe they are looking to shake things up right now. They actually got a win after benching him in that last game, got the locker room a jolt. I can't imagine him getting scratched again in the near future, but you never know. And with teams like this, especially considering they already have Montgomery as a coach, I think that's a big part of it, because this is not a situation where you're going to flip the coaches to try to get more success. You have a very good coach, so realistically, if you're going to make a move, it's going to have to be with a player. And considering Kyrou has been in rumors for a while, there is a decent chance he gets moved at some point. My thing with the Islanders is, what is St. Louis going to be looking for? We're going to talk about that more in 1 second. Just on the surface of things, there's a lot of excitement. There's some talk about the Islanders potentially considering buying this year now that they having more success with Mathew Schaefer. Clearly, Mathew Schaefer is ahead of schedule. Looks like Callum Ritchie may be ahead of schedule as well. For me, I would like the Islanders to be patient here. You have the young foundation. You have all these future assets. We've seen a lot of teams in the past try to rush out of rebuilds and retools. A great example is the New York Rangers. When they got their first overall pick, they instantly signed Artemi Panarin. They instantly made trades to try to improve right away. And we're seeing now that didn't work that well. They never really built that young core. And that's something I don't want the Islanders to do. I love this idea of having an older core to go along with that younger core. I love keeping Mathew Barzal and Bo Horvat. And for the record, would not consider trading those players at all for a player like Kyrou, even though he does bring something a bit different. The thing is, I like the idea of having a player like that to go along with those guys. It does not make sense to trade any of your top prospects for that. And what that means is you can't be trading Callum Ritchie, you can't be trading Victor Eklund or Cole Eisman. Those guys can't be. Really, I would be cautious about trading Danny Nelson. Although, for the record, I think that's more a situation where I don't think that is a fit for St. Louis. Really, it's really interesting to even think about what St. Louis would want in a trade for Kyrou. Now, on their end, what does make sense here is they have a lot of young wing prospects coming up. They have a lot of potential on that forward group. What I don't like about St. Louis at all is that defense. Really, the left defense, to me, does not look good at all. That Fowler contract is looking really scary as of right now. I still think he can bounce back. There are concerns. I don't like Tucker. I know their coaches seem to like Tucker. I don't think he's really an everyday guy, but I don't watch him enough, so maybe I don't know everything they're seeing. And then the right side looks really scary. They've had Mathieu play. He's scratched currently because he's been having a rough start. Really, I think Mathieu needs time down in Springfield. He is not ready for NHL action. His stat lines have been horrific, and I don't like to judge too much just on their stat lines, but not encouraging so far. And I really wonder, looking at St. Louis, the roster isn't perfect, but I really wonder if this is a team that a trade could get them going. Again, Neighbors has been hurt. Krug isn't coming back, but they have some players here where it's kind of shocking that they've been as bad as they are, which is why perhaps they're looking for more of a shakeup. And something like that is something I think can really work for the Islanders. I think there are trades that can be made. Looking at the Islanders, one of the weaknesses in their prospect pool is the right wing. So considering that Kyrou is a 27-year-old player, somebody who's younger than Barzal and Horvat, it could make a bit of sense to bring this player along instead of drafting a right wing, which realistically would take you 3 or 4 years to really get effective results in the NHL. I don't think the Islanders' plan is for this retool, rebuild, whatever you want to call it, to take that long. Perhaps this idea of it ending this year is a little premature, but I don't think it's going to take that long. So perhaps you look to make a trade with NHL roster players. There would have to be some money coming back, but I can see perhaps maybe a player like Holmstrom could be a solid foundation for a trade. Again, I don't love the idea of trading Holmstrom. He's a player that I have high hopes for, but look, you have to give to get in the NHL. And one thing, looking at the Blues lineup, while I do have a lot of interesting offensive pieces, they're not playing well defensively at all. And Holmstrom is a player who can provide offense, but also plays very strong defensively. He is an incredible penalty killer, something that I think would be really interesting for the Blues. And a younger player than who the Islanders would be getting in Kyrou, where I think that makes sense as a piece going in return, along with a pick. Maybe they'd be interested in a player like Siplikov, who at this point, while I like, is not really getting time on the Islanders. I think he's a guy who maybe like Kyrou could use a change in scenery. We talked to a little bit. Kyrou's stats are down so far this season. Now, I think that's more of an effect of the Blues as a team just aren't playing well. I'm not really concerned about him as a player moving forward, especially considering his age and what he's done in the past. Last season as a player who scored 36 goals. Not going to read into a slow start this much, but it's notable. And for the record, Kyrou is not the best player defensively. Now, I've also wondered if they'd be interested in a player like Adam Pelech or Ryan Pulock. I don't like their defense. I don't know how their management views their defense. I really think they should be looking for a right defense player, which unfortunately is not the best fit for the Islanders. But if they were interested in a player like Pelech, I think he's definitely on the chopping block for the future of the Islanders, and that could make sense. Maybe you tie together a Pelech and a Holmstrom and add a pick, something like that. Honestly, I don't know if these teams are the best fit at this point in time. I think the Islanders should definitely stay on this radar, and I think there's a chance that this is something the Blues explore in the future. They've explored it in the past. If a trade doesn't happen this year, I can see the Islanders revisiting this situation in a year or so, where I think it would make more sense. As of right now, if you can get it done for players like Pelech or even Holmstrom, something like that, I know that's probably not ideal for St. Louis, which is why I'm saying I don't think this is going to happen. If you could make something like that work, then I would do it. But the Islanders are not in the position right now where they can be trading a Cole Eiserman, a Victor Eklund, a Kashawn Aitchison, a Callum Ritchie. These types of players are what the Islanders need to build their future on, and you don't want to rush that. Really, St. Louis is another example of a team that kind of got ahead of themselves when it comes to this rebuild. And it's going to be really interesting, regardless, on if Kyrou gets traded to the Islanders, or even if he moves at all, to see what happens next in St. Louis. I'd love to know in the comments what you think about this. What would you be willing to give up in a trade for this player? Or do you think the Islanders should not be really looking for a trade to improve themselves at this point in time? For me, it's a really interesting discussion to talk about if the Islanders even should be looking to buy at some point this season, because the roster is looking a lot better than I think a lot of people thought it would in the beginning of the season. A lot of things that we were hoping would go right have gone right, but still there are some concerns. Really, honestly, if the Islanders are to make a change anywhere, they likely should focus more on the right side of their defense, but we'll see what happens and see how the season progresses for both the Islanders and the Blues. That's going to do it for this episode of Islanders Digest. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm your host, Patrick Nilan. Catch you on the next episode. Let's go, Islanders.